The lobbying group that represents major pharmaceutical companies is launching a 7-figure ad campaign in an effort to defeat the Democrats' plan to lower drug prices through the budget reconciliation bill. Now, what that bill would do, if it ever passes, what the proposal would do is allow for Medicare to negotiate drug prices directly with pharmaceutical companies, allowing for lower drug prices. Right now, Medicare can't do that, which is insane. Now, pharmaceutical companies don't like that, so the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, also known as Pharma, announced Wednesday that it is launching a 7-figure ad campaign against the proposals moving through Congress to lower prescription drug prices. Now, if you're wondering what these ads might look like and what type of lies they might tell, we'll give you an example.
I'm Sue and I have type 1 diabetes. I depend on Medicare to get my medicines. It's not always easy, but I make it work. Now some in Congress want to make things even harder. They want to repeal a protection in Medicare that protects access to my medicines. They call it negotiation, but it really means the government decides what medicines I can get. That would make it harder for people on Medicare to get the medicines we need. Medicare means access. Please don't take that away.
Paid for by Pharma.
Now, one thing that gives me a little bit of hope was the like to dislike ratio on that video. Seems like most Americans are privy to the fact that there's a profit motive behind this effort with pharmaceutical companies wanting to charge us considerably more for pharmaceutical drugs compared to other countries. But no, there's nothing in the bill indicating that the government will choose which drugs will be available to Americans. This is just an effort, and I think a common sense effort to ensure that we're not being price gouged for the same drugs that people pay far less for in other countries. The Congressional Budget Office, by the way, estimated that the House Democrats' leading bill, known as HR 3, would save the government almost $500 billion over 10 years on prescription drugs and lower the cost of drugs by about 50% by allowing the Secretary of Health and Human Services to negotiate prices. And so again, that cuts into the profits of these pharmaceutical companies, which is precisely why they're putting out this extremely expensive ad campaign full of lies meant to scare Medicare patients.
Yeah, so now let me give you their best case scenario and you'll see how absurd it is, and then we'll work backwards. So they say, oh, there's one study, Big Pharma, the drug companies that are overcharging you apparently by $500 billion. So now, do you think they're gonna fight hard and spend a lot of money to keep an extra $500 billion? This is their number one priority, because that is exactly how much they're robbing you by. So the prices, as Anna just told you, are now, could be cut in half. Could be cut in half, we all know it, everybody knows it. Cut 50%. So what's the extra 50% for? It goes straight into their executives' pockets and their shareholders' profits. It's highway robbery, $500 billion robbery. Okay, it's happening right now. It's in the middle. We're in the middle of it. So what is their incredibly weak excuse for that robbery? They say, well, look, there's a study that came out, and they say over a 10-year period, out of the 300 drugs that we're all going to develop, we might not develop 8 out of the 300 if this bill passes. Well, I did the math on that. That's under 3%.
And I don't believe them.
Okay, that study's horse crap. And which 8 drugs, right? What are we talking about here? And almost all the research is paid for by the American government, not by the drug companies. So every part of it is already BS. But even if you took their best case scenario, they say, now look, guys, you would get to save $500 billion, but you'd only have over 97% of the drugs we would produce. Wow, what a compelling argument.
Right, so the argument that they're making is, listen, we need those profits because we then take those profits and invest it in the research and development of new drugs. But that's not true. In fact, there was a great exchange between an executive over at AbbVie and Representative Katie Porter in regard to the amount of money that's invested in research and development versus a bunch of other things, including marketing. Let's take a look.
How about executive compensation, 2013 to 2018?
2013 to 2018, it's probably on average about $60 million a year.
Try 334 on for size. Now, how much did AbbVie spend on stock buybacks and stock buybacks and dividends to enrich your shareholders from 2013 to 2018?
Well, stock buybacks, if you actually look at just pure stock buybacks, it would be about $13 billion.
Stock buybacks and dividends is the question, sir.
Dividends, I'd have to come back with a number for that over that period of time.
$50 billion. So, Mr. Gonzalez, you're spending all this money to make sure you make money rather than spending money to invest in, develop drugs, and help patients with affordable life-saving drugs. You lie to patients when you charge them twice as much for an unimproved drug, and then you lie to policymakers when you tell us that R&D justifies those price increases.
Oh, it's one of my favorite exchanges between Katie Porter and one of these goons. So you see that small circle, that pink circle with R&D compared to the massive circle for stock buybacks. And it shows you what their priorities are. They're lying to you when they say, we need to price gouge you in order to develop other drugs. Look at that giant blue circle representing stock buybacks and dividends. And then over there at the very top, you see that small circle for research and development. I mean, it's just, we know what's really going on. They're robbing us.
So guys, you couldn't say, hey, look, they should be able to do dividends. They are a for-profit company, et cetera. But you don't get to say, hey, I need the $500 billion for research and development if you're not using it for research and development. So are you gonna make a promise right now that you're gonna take the entire $500 billion and put it in research and development? No, you're not gonna do that at all, are you? You don't have anywhere near that budget. And why are US taxpayers through NIH and so many other organizations actually doing the research? And then we never get compensated at all. Where's our $500 billion? This is plain robbery. Now let's talk about who's allowing the robbery. And that is the corrupt politicians, period. End of conversation. Okay, so if you're hearing anything else in mainstream media, they're just part of the kabuki theater that's meant to lie to you to protect the corrupt politicians.
Yeah, and I want to name some names because we know that the lobbying has an impact not just on Republican lawmakers, but Democratic lawmakers as well. I mean, as we know, Kyrsten Sinema in the Senate has taken nearly $1 billion from-
Million.
I'm sorry, $1 million, my bad.
She hopes one day $1 billion.
$1 million, my bad, from the pharmaceutical companies, and she's of course vociferous in her opposition to the budget reconciliation bill. Well, there are other lawmakers that should be named. The details of the final legislation remain unclear, as The Hill reports, though particularly after 3 moderate House Democrats, Representatives Kurt Schrader of Oregon, Kathleen Rice of New York, and Scott Peters of California, said Tuesday that they would vote against HR 3 in the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and that they instead wanted a more scaled back measure. So some of the alternative proposals, it's just laughable. It's like, no, why don't we give Medicare the opportunity to negotiate like maybe 5 to 8 drug prices, but everything else is off limits.
No, it's
but why? But why? Why? Like, what's the justification of that? And they don't even feel like they need to give a justification.
No, guys, there's no ambiguity here at all. This proposal is favored by over 90% of Americans. That's a Kaiser poll. They're in the healthcare industry as well. So when you go to the Democrats that Anna just named, Schrader, Peters, and Rice, you say, well, now over 90% of the voters want it, and over 70% of Republicans want it, over 95% of Democrats want it. It makes no sense to sacrifice $500 billion for research we pay for anyway. And then in a worst case scenario, we'd get more than 97% of the drugs anyway. They have no answer for that. But the problem is the media barely ask them that question, and they certainly do not clarify why those congressmen are doing what they're doing. Here's the actual answer, and every one of you already knows it, because they are taking legalized bribes from drug industry and the healthcare industry overall. That's it. That is not 99% of the motivation. That is 100% of the motivation. And so if a reporter is not reporting that, they're not a real reporter. These Rice and Peters and Schrader are not going around going, what do you guys think? $500 billion or 2.5% of the drugs in a worst case scenario? We're having a debate. They're not having a debate. They're taking literal checks, literal legalized bribes, putting in their campaign, putting in as campaign contributions, let alone the fact that they're all corrupt and they're all going to work for lobbyists anyway, which leads me to tell you that Senator Blanche Lincoln and Senator Mark Pryor, who were both Democrats in the Senate, conservative Democrats, but they claimed this was the one issue. Oh my God, I will tell you this, we have got to negotiate drug prices. Back when Bush and the Republicans were the ones that were saying don't negotiate, and Democrats were saying negotiate. Now they have become what? You're never going to guess it. They've become incredibly wealthy lobbyists for the drug industry. And those two corporate Democratic goons are now going to lobby their fellow corporate Democratic friends at literal rooftop parties in Washington.
Yes.
And saying, oh, now remember everybody, remember how we're all corrupt? And they just pretend that we want to negotiate drug prices, and then you'll help me rob them, and then eventually one day you'll get rich like me. And their very presence at those parties is a signal to the people that are at those parties. One day you're also going to be obscenely wealthy if you play ball. By the way, who's at that party? Chris Coons, one of the worst corporate Democrats in the Senate and Joe Biden's best friend. These are facts. They might be uncomfortable facts, but they're facts. And also Jim Clyburn, one of the most corporate Democrats this country has ever seen.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And Blanche Lincoln, by the way, she's created her own lobbying group that takes in $20,000 a month from pharmaceutical companies that she's representing. So it gives you a sense of where the priorities are. I guess when it comes to people in Congress, especially outgoing lawmakers, they've got a price, and they're gonna make a ton of money once their time in Congress is over. They're gonna take it.
Okay, I'm gonna say one last thing about this because how deep the corruption is. First of all, I don't want you to be mistaken. Republicans are not just as corrupt, they're more corrupt. 100% of the Republican Party is opposed to negotiating drug prices. Every single Republican in Congress wants higher drug prices for you, and don't you forget that. Just because the corporate Democrats are just as corrupt as the Republicans are, you shouldn't forget that the entire Republican Party is corrupt. And of course, former Republican goons like Senator John Kyle, Representative Tom Davis, also now drug company lobbyists telling their Republican friends, hey, we'll bribe you legally. And then they say, oh, of course, that's what the Republican Party's in business for. And finally, the staffers. So just because your staffer goes to work as a lobbyist doesn't mean that you're necessarily culpable, but you certainly shouldn't take meetings with them. So there's good people like Senator Elizabeth Warren, but her former health policy advisor, she has good policy positions. Her former advisor is lobbyist. No, it's easy, super easy. Senator Warren, you could be friends with her too. And by the way, she hasn't done anything wrong, okay? But if my former advisor then becomes a lobbyist, I'll go play basketball with them, I'll go have beers with them, but they're banned from the office. And even when we're playing basketball, they're banned from talking to me because they have prostituted themselves for corporations. That's a fact. So I'm not interested, and in fact, I'll lose respect for you if you talk. So shut up about it and let's play ball. But I am not going to ever have you in my office. Of course, former advisor to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Dean Aghion, also a lobbyist. But really, take any advisors to almost all of these corporate politicians, and it's not the bug, it's the feature to become a lobbyist and get rich off of being corrupt while they were in office.
And finally, we got to show you what that ends up, doing to us as taxpayers. Not only do we get price gouged on these pharmaceutical drugs, remember we're talking about Medicare. This is the government providing the insurance, the care to seniors, right? So let's take a look at this last chart in the document. There we go. So bills for pills. So this was done by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and they show the United States relative to other developed countries in regard to how much spending per capita on drugs. Right, so the US spends far more compared to all those other countries. And that's what happens when there are literally regulations in place preventing the government from being able to negotiate for lower drug prices directly with these pharmaceutical companies.
And every one of those countries has better healthcare results than we do.
Yep.
So we pay way more and get way worse results. Why? corruption, period. Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.